You've seen it 1,000 times. Mirrors, bathroom mirrors, elevator walls, barbershop chairs, two mirrors facing each other, and suddenly you're staring into infinity. A tunnel of reflections, getting smaller and smaller, fading into some distant point. At first glance, it seems simple. Light bounces back and forth, reflection after reflection, endlessly. It's obvious, isn't it? Well, stop right there. Actually, think about this for a second. If light bounces infinitely, why does the tunnel eventually fade into darkness? Why doesn't it keep going forever, with perfect clarity? You're looking at mirrors, not foggy glass. Each reflection should be as sharp as the first, right? So why do the images get dimmer? Why do they fade away into the blackness after a few dozen reflections? And here's the real question. What's happening in that space between the mirrors right now? Is there an infinite number of you trapped in there? Are those copies real? If you walked away, would they still exist? You might think this is just light bouncing around, but that's not an answer. You're just restating the observation in different words, not explaining what's actually going on. What I'm telling you is that you don't truly understand mirrors. Sure, you get how they work in the everyday sense, just like you understand electricity by flipping a switch and having the light turn on. But understanding something doesn't mean it's fully explained. It's not just about functionality. It's about seeing the deeper truth. So what actually happens when light hits a mirror? It's not what you might think. Yes, light bounces off, and yes, the angle of incidence equals the angle of reflection. You've seen the diagrams. Incoming rays, outgoing rays, everything neatly aligned. But here's the catch. That's not the full picture. It's a description, not an explanation. It's telling you what happens, but not why it happens. Why does light reflect in the first place? Why doesn't it just pass through or scatter in random directions? Why does it even behave this way with a mirror? Let's break it down. Light is an electromagnetic wave moving through space as oscillating electric and magnetic fields. When that wave hits a metal surface, usually something like aluminum or silver, something specific happens. The oscillating electric field of light pushes on the free electrons in the metal. And here's the thing. Those electrons, unlike in most materials, aren't locked to any one atom. They're free to move, to slosh around. So when the incoming light hits the metal surface, it forces those electrons to vibrate back and forth at the exact same frequency as the light. And here's the game-changing part. When electrons oscillate, they radiate. It's not just a property of mirrors. It's basic physics. If you shake an electron, it will emit electromagnetic radiation. So, what happens next? The oscillating electrons in the mirror's surface send out electromagnetic radiation of their own. But it's not the same light that hit them. The light emitted by the electrons comes out in the exact same direction as the incoming light, but it's traveling the opposite way. That's why light reflects. It's not the original light bouncing back. It's newly generated light, radiated by the electrons in the mirror. Here's where it gets even stranger. Now imagine two mirrors facing each other. You're standing between them. Light leaves your face, hits the first mirror, then bounces to the second mirror, and the process repeats. Each time the light hits a mirror, it gets absorbed and remitted by the free electrons. This process isn't just the light bouncing back like a ping-pong ball. It's a cascade of new photons, each one born from the previous one. Every reflection isn't a copy of the original. It's an entirely new photon, created by the electron vibrations. This process keeps going, as long as the mirrors keep absorbing and emitting light. Now here's the burning question. Why does the tunnel of images eventually fade to darkness? Why doesn't the light go on forever? What's killing the infinite cycle of reflections? The truth is, there are three factors at play here, and each one contributes to the diminishing light. First, no mirror is perfect. Every mirror absorbs a tiny bit of light with each reflection. Even the best mirrors lose around 1 to 2% of the light each time. So, with every bounce, the light gets weaker and weaker. This adds up fast. After a few reflections, the light dims enough that you can't see it anymore. Second, mirrors aren't perfectly aligned. Even the slightest angle between them can cause the reflections to shift over time. Eventually, they move off the edge of the mirror and become invisible. Third, light takes time to travel. Even though light is fast, it's not instant. Every time light bounces back and forth, it takes a little longer to reach your eyes. The deeper images you're seeing are older reflections, meaning you're not seeing an infinite number of new photons, but photons that left your face seconds or even nanoseconds ago. So now, you're looking at the fading tunnel of reflections, and you might wonder, are those infinite copies of you really there? Or is it just an illusion, a trick of light? Let me explain. Those images exist as real light. Photons that traveled from your face, hit the mirrors, and bounced back into your eyes. But they don't exist independently. They only exist because you're looking. If you close your eyes, the photons are still bouncing between the mirrors, but no image forms. The light is still there, but it's not real in the sense that you can observe it without your eyes. This raises an even deeper philosophical question. Is an image real if no one is looking at it? This is more than just a curiosity. It's a fundamental property of how light interacts with matter and how observation affects reality. The infinite reflections in the mirror tunnel only exist because you're observing them, and the process that makes them real is all about light, photons, and how they interact with the mirrors. And here's where it all connects back to quantum mechanics. What you're seeing isn't just light bouncing off a surface. It's the universe calculating probabilities, summing paths, and delivering the most likely outcome. Every reflection, every photon, is part of a quantum calculation that makes reality what it is. This is why mirrors aren't just reflections. They're windows into the deeper mechanics of the universe itself. Now that we understand what happens when light reflects between mirrors, let's dive deeper into the question you might be asking. Why does any of this matter? You might be thinking, okay, I get it, light bounces around, but why does this reveal something about reality? It's because the more we look at light, the more we realize that the nature of reality itself is far stranger than we ever imagined. When you look at something as ordinary as a reflection in a mirror, you're not just seeing your image, you're seeing the physics that governs how the universe works, how light behaves, and how matter interacts. You might see your face, but you're also seeing a complex series of events unfolding across space and time. We often think of mirrors as simply tools for seeing our reflection, but in fact, they're revealing a deeper truth about perception, light, and even time. The mirrors don't just show us a reflection, they show us the quantum nature of light and the limits of our understanding. When light bounces between the two mirrors, it's not just endlessly reflecting. The photons are being generated and remitted by the mirrors themselves, creating a feedback loop. This feedback loop isn't infinite in the classical sense, it's finite. The images fade due to a combination of energy loss, misalignment, and the speed at which light travels. But that fading isn't just the physical world running out of energy. No, it's a glimpse into the underlying fabric of space and time. It's a reminder that every part of reality, even something as simple as a reflection in the mirror, is tied to complex and abstract principles. You're not just seeing a static image. You're seeing the world in motion, constantly shifting, recalculating, and changing. Each photon bouncing between the mirrors is one part of a much bigger picture, a picture we're only starting to understand. The fading tunnel is a microcosm of the universe itself. Everything is constantly in flux, always in motion, never static. But there's more to this than just light and reflection. The fading of the tunnel of images serves as a metaphor for the limitations of our perceptions. What we see with our eyes is just a small part of the picture. Our brains are hardwired to create coherent stories from the sensory data we gather. And yet, as we've seen with the mirror, even the simplest things in our environment can turn out to be far more complicated than we first imagined. The mirror tunnel doesn't just reveal the properties of light, it reveals the limits of human perception and the limitations of our understanding. When you look into that tunnel of reflections, you're not just staring at a series of images. You're confronting the idea that the universe is far more complex than you've ever been taught to believe. What we take for granted, what we call reality, is often just a construct, an interpretation our brains put together from the sensory data we receive. This makes perfect sense on one level, but on another, it's deeply unsettling. How much of what we experience as real is an illusion, a simplification, or a distortion? What happens when you zoom out far enough to see the underlying structure? And that's where things get truly profound. The mirror tunnel, fading into darkness, isn't just a physical phenomenon. It's a symbol for how our understanding of the universe is both incomplete and evolving. We often think we've reached the limits of what we can know, but the more we learn, the more we realize just how much we don't understand. The fading tunnel is a perfect analogy for the fact that in science and in life, there's always more to discover, always deeper layers to peel away. The fading of light, the endless cycle of reflection, it all points to the same truth. Reality is more complex than we can possibly imagine. And here's the paradox. As much as the mirror reveals about the nature of light, space, and time, it also highlights how much we don't know. We can measure the energy loss between reflections. We can predict how light will behave in a mirror. But we still don't understand it fully. The deeper we dig into the fundamental nature of reality, the more we realize that some things, like the way light works in a mirror, may be beyond our current ability to understand completely. This doesn't mean we stop looking. In fact, the deeper we go, the more fascinating it gets. The physics of the mirror tunnel is a constant reminder of the limits of human perception and the complexity of the universe. The next time you stand between two mirrors, staring into the infinite tunnel, you'll know that what you're seeing is far more than a simple reflection. It's a reminder that reality, the way we experience it, is far stranger, far more intricate than we ever imagined. It's not just light bouncing around, it's space, time, and perception working together in ways we're only beginning to understand. And the most beautiful part is that we get to keep learning, keep asking, and keep discovering. That is the true wonder of the universe. This is where things get really interesting. What we've learned about the fading mirror reflections isn't just a quirky physical trick. It's a lens through which we can view a fundamental truth about the world. You've seen it, haven't you? That infinite hallway of reflections, getting smaller and dimmer with each bounce. But what we're really looking at isn't just light, it's the limitations of how we perceive reality. It's a visual metaphor for the fact that our understanding of the universe is inherently incomplete. The fading images are a symbol of the boundaries of our perception. The light bouncing between those mirrors doesn't just fade because the reflections stop existing. No, it fades because our ability to detect it is limited. The universe is still producing those photons, but they're just too faint, too weak for our eyes to register. The same principle applies to everything around us. How much of the world do we miss because our senses only pick up part of the picture? What if the universe is constantly revealing itself to us in ways we're not equipped to perceive? That's the real takeaway here. Everything we experience is limited by our perception. Our senses, even when they seem reliable, are just interpretations of the data they receive. When you look at the table in front of you, you're not actually seeing all the atoms, the particles, and the endless interactions happening on the microscopic scale. Your brain is making a best guess, stitching together a coherent image from the data it receives. This isn't a new idea, of course. It's what we've been learning for centuries. Our senses don't provide us with a perfect reflection of reality. They provide us with a model, a simplified version of what's really happening. And the fading mirror is just the beginning of understanding that. The next time you look at something, whether it's a street sign, a piece of art, or a beautiful sunset, ask yourself, what am I not seeing? What's happening in the spaces between the things I can observe? The truth is, we're constantly filling in gaps, constructing reality based on our senses. But those gaps are huge, and the more we explore, the more we realize just how much we miss. Take the mirror again. The fading images show us that light doesn't just bounce. It disappears because our eyes can't detect it anymore. But does that mean the light ceases to exist? Of course not. The photons are still out there. The universe doesn't just stop providing light. The fading is an artifact of our perception, a consequence of the limitations of our senses. And just like that, the universe is full of things we can't see, things that are happening beyond our detection. If this simple trick of the mirror can make us question our reality, imagine how many other assumptions we're carrying around that are equally flawed. It's fascinating to think about. In a way, the fading mirror is a visual representation of how little we actually understand about the universe. It's not that the universe is inherently unknowable, it's that our tools, our senses, are inadequate. The real challenge lies in expanding our perception, in asking the deeper questions and pushing beyond the limits of our understanding. The mirror reveals the trickery of light, but it also reveals the trickery of our own minds. We see a reflection, but what we don't see is the complex web of interactions that made that reflection possible. And this isn't just theoretical. These limitations shape our lives every day. The light that bounces off the mirror and hits your eyes is one example. But the same concept applies to everything, from the way we interpret sound, to the way we process touch, and even to the way we think about the passage of time. What we experience as reality is always a simplified, interpreted version of the actual universe. It's this realization that has the potential to change everything. When you understand that what you see isn't the full picture, that the universe is always working on a level beyond your senses, it opens up a whole new way of thinking. The fading reflections aren't just a physical phenomenon. They're a clue to the bigger picture, the way the universe works on a level that goes far beyond what we can see or comprehend. So, the next time you stand in front of a mirror, remember that it's not just reflecting your image, it's reflecting the limits of your perception. What seems clear, obvious, and normal is often just an illusion. The universe, in all its complexity, is constantly slipping through our fingers, just beyond what we can truly understand. The more we dig, the more we discover how little we know, and the more we learn that the universe is far stranger and more beautiful than we could ever imagine. And the mirror is just one of the many places where this mystery reveals itself. Now, look at the reflections once again. Notice the fading, the diminishing light, the absence that becomes more pronounced the further into the tunnel you look. What you're seeing is not just light bouncing back, it's the universe's limits being revealed. It's a reminder that what you see isn't always what's there. The true nature of the universe is constantly at work, beyond what your eyes can detect. And that's the beauty of it. When you start to see through the illusions, when you start to ask the right questions, the world opens up in ways you never expected. And that's what this journey is all about. Keep questioning, keep seeking, and the universe will reveal itself, little by little, one piece at a time. That's the power of seeing beyond the surface.